Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Texas Conflict Coach radio program. If you have ever experienced or engaged in destructive or unresolved conflict, then you know it leads to broken relationships, distrust, and damaging results. Our program will help you manage and resolve conflict effectively with strategies, valuable resources, and support. I am your host, Pattie Porter. My guest hosts, Zena Zameta and Stephen Kotev, along with our guest experts, will share our experiences, raise your awareness, and give you food for thought. We will share with you problem-solving strategies no matter what your situation is. At work, with neighbors or friends, family, and with partners. Tune in or join in the conversation every Tuesday evening. What can you do when your neighbors are noisy, don't respect your boundaries, commit illegal acts, and even threaten and harass you and your family? Bob Borzotta of ABC News is here to kick off our series on neighbor, landlord, and tenant disputes. Bob is the author of Neighbors from Hell, managing today's brand of conflict close to home. He will be speaking with me and taking your calls about this age-old social problem that shows every day it is on steroids. Now, who is Bob? Bob Borzotta is the neighbor conflict troubleshooter for ABC's 2020 and the managing editor of the e-newsletter Neighbor Beat. He is a reporter who spends most of his time helping good neighbors in dealing with the jerks next door. He regularly appears on NPR, has helped guests with neighbor problems on the Steve Harvey Show, and gives one-on-one guidance to thousands who suffer from having neighbors from hell. Now, again, tonight we are taking live callers' questions or comments. So simply call 347-324-3591, and you'll press the number 1 key. Our apprentice, Abby, will be screening your call, so be ready to ask your specific question. We also have our chat room open at Blog Talk Radio. Simply go to blogtalkradio.com/Texas conflict-coach, and you can also leave your comments and questions there. And finally, we invite you to participate in our live Twitter chat going on right now. Use your hashtag ConflictChat or tweet us directly at TXConflictCoach. So, Bob, welcome to our program tonight.
Hi, Pattie. How are you?
Oh, great. We've been so excited about having you on the program. Actually, I've been dreaming about having you on the program for a long time because I've been following your work in Neighbor Beat. And this is the kind of things that we deal with a lot. And I'm sure you have a great following yourself.
Probably not quite as great as yours, but it's great to be here, and I love your work as well.
Well, thank you. And, so the first thing is I want listeners to be able to understand and hear a little bit about your own story and how in the world you came about helping people out in their difficult situation. So what would you like to share with them?
Well, sure. I think that in order to really be involved in dispute mediation of any sort, or at least dispute mitigation, you need to have had some type of an issue with conflict in your past in order to give you a taste of what it's like that you're trying to help people with. In my own case, I did have a neighbor who was noisy. I had put up with it. Finally, I addressed it with him. He gave me lip service. It just kept going and getting worse, louder. Music is what it was. And, in the city of Philadelphia where if you're in a small home, you share a party wall with someone that's, made of old clay brick, and, there's not much soundproofing. So, I would just get madder and madder, and finally I just said to the guy, look, if this isn't going to get better, I'm going to have to call the police. And that's when I found out he didn't care. He just didn't care, and I went into this no, I don't want to be dramatic, but I started to really think that there was something wrong with me, something that I was doing wrong. I thought I was a good neighbor. Why doesn't this person like me? And I think a lot of people go through that.
And the fact is that I think a lot of us, it must have been stunning for you when you're thinking, I think I'm a good neighbor. I'm trying to be pleasant. I'm trying to speak up. I'm trying to communicate, and yet this person doesn't really care. That must have been a little stunning.
It was stunning, and it really, I said I didn't want to be dramatic, but it sort of felt like a personal crisis, where I started looking within, trying to figure out what's going on, and, really blaming myself in many ways. And I started to think, well, wait a minute, I'm not the bad guy here. Why am I feeling like I'm the bad guy? So I started to really get into studying this kind of situation, and I set up what I thought would be a place where people could chat, neighborsfromhell.com. And it turned out that I was not alone, that there were so many people dealing with this. And then, of course, later on in 2009, I released the book, Neighbors from Hell. I think that if I had not started that blog, the speak message board way back in, I think, 2000, I would not have nearly the kind of expertise that I have now, because you only solve these problems by learning about them and actually getting into hands-on helping people.
I imagine that you never thought in a million years that would be the direction you would be going in.
No, I was always a news reporter, and then I sort of switched over to corporate public relations. I've loved all of my work. This has been sort of, I don't know, it almost feels like the calling in my life. Once you come to understand all the complexities and complications, you have human behavior, you have municipal governments, you have HOAs, you have bad landlords, you have good neighbors who won't support you, and there's so much that goes into the neighbor versus neighbor dynamic. Really, one book, doesn't really scratch the surface of all of it. So I did try to cover quite a bit. And, I guess this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. Looks that way.
Well, the calling, the passion of helping others. So now, clarify for folks, because you've done a number of things where you've assisted. Can you clarify what assistance or intervention means? What exactly are you doing when you're helping a neighbor?
Well, some people refer to what I do as mediation. And it's actually not, because a mediator plays a very important role in any type of a conflict situation that involves reasonable people who can be brought to the table, where no laws have been broken, no one's harassing, no one's, threatening to kill you. Once you get to that level of neighbor conflict, where it's just an all-out war, mediation is not what's needed. And I see that again and again. People who reach out to me aren't looking for compromise, and the folks that they're working with would never compromise anyway. They need an equalizer, the anti-mediator, which is what I've come to start calling myself. And that's because really, the folks who are doing the really bad stuff, the good, regular people, I don't mean that they're perfect neighbors. I've never been a perfect neighbor. Who is? But I'm a decent, regular person. I'm a fine neighbor, and I shouldn't be victimized. Neither should you. Neither should anyone be victimized. And that person needs to seek justice. And that doesn't happen all the time through mediation. You do need someone who goes in and deals with your municipal government, who talks to your landlord, who talks to your local police, and really, comes to understand exactly what's going on and, helps you in getting that person under control. You're not going to have, the kind of happy running off into the sunset resolution that I think a lot of people would like. You're going to instead have a manageable situation where you don't bother them, they don't bother you, and that's about as good as it gets. Once it gets to a full-out war, you don't see friendships rising from the rubble of these neighbor conflicts, I'm afraid.
Oh, how so true is that? Now, you've been doing this for a while now. What are the typical neighbor battles? What are the typical issues that neighbors are battling over?
It can be just about anything, but the major ones that I see start out with noise. Noise is like the all-out calling card of the bad neighbor. They are most of the time noisy for some reason. I don't know if it's just a lack of social skills or bad hearing, but for some reason, noise is an indicator of a bad neighbor, and they will use it to harass also. Subsequent to that is something that I see coming up. Really, it's going to push noise down, I think, and that is just basic harassment. And it doesn't matter if you went and complained to your neighbor about their barking dog, about the dog's poop smell, about the way that they bag their trash and it winds up falling over into your yard. It could be over a shared driveway. As soon as you bring something up with a neighbor, that person is either going to address it the way a mature adult would, which is what we want, which is what we hope for, or become a very unreasonable expectation for many of us. That person is going to retaliate. And that's the kind of person that you need to get control over the situation that they put you in.
And how true is that? I mean, I've heard of so many situations myself in the course of the work that I do in conflict about, you would think that the healthy, constructive thing to do is to speak up early before things become full blown, like you said, war or battle. But unless you really know your neighbor, if you communicate, and a lot of people don't even communicate to their neighbors anymore. So how do you know your neighbor? And so, like you said, they take that risk that if they bring up whatever the issue is or the concern, is this person going to, like you said, reasonably communicate back and be concerned, or are they going to be like the neighbor you experienced that didn't really care and and might escalate the noise or the music or the band or the whatever that's happening as a way to harass or retaliate. Now, but what in your experience continues to cause the harassment to continue? Because I can see someone retaliating initially and harassing, but what do you think continues it building?
It can be a number of different things. Naturally, if someone retaliates against you, you're, very likely going to either retaliate, which I don't recommend in most cases, or you're going to call the police, you're going to call, the Homeowners Association, depending on where you are, what the situation is. Could be code enforcement if it's over something like a fence or cutting of trees or, stuff like that. But as soon as you do that, then they're going to ratchet it up even further. They're going to increase the noise or whatever the initial issue was that they brought to your table. And it sort of snowballs very quickly. It's just sort of one of the foibles of humanity that it's so easy for us to get pulled down to the level of a neighbor from hell. It is not easy for us to pull them up into what we consider to be a productive environment where people can cohabitate within close proximity. And they really have it on us because they love the idea of the conflict. This is something that, basically they get off on. They enjoy it. The rest of us, we're kind of regular people. We don't have time for conflict. We don't know, how to fight with people. And that's why I see so many people just move away from their bad neighbors.
Yeah, I saw your Neighbor Beat, the recent Neighbor Beat e-newsletter that you just put out, and the for sale sign?
Yeah.
Because I'm moving or selling this house because my neighbor's an asshole.
Yeah.
And it was just well, that's okay. I hope you sell your house with that kind of sign. I mean, so the thing about this is that it happens a lot. Right quick, we'll just take a quick little break just to say that, folks, you are listening to the Texas Conflict Coach radio program, and we do have Bob Borzotta with ABC 2020 and the Neighbor from Hell. He is the author of Neighbors from Hell and has done a number of segments that I've actually seen. And we have a number of folks in our in our chat room. So I do encourage you folks to leave your comments or questions in the chat room. We'll bring it into the show. We do have some people in the studio, and I think Abby's screening them right now, so we'll let you know, Bob, when they're ready to come online live. So with these, so is there any other major issues that you wanted to, before we move on into our next question, is there anything else that's coming to mind regarding, these major issues around harassment and then this ratcheting of retaliation that goes on? Anything else that comes to mind especially where they're seeking your assistance?
Yeah, well, this is the thing that, and this frankly scares the hell out of me. Over the years that I've been studying this, and that's about 10, 15 years, I forget how long, I've seen violent outcomes exploding in numbers. And that's because sometimes it's the bad guy who's already bad and is willing and able to take a swing at you, key your car, do any number of things, throw your dog out into traffic, as someone recently did here in New Jersey. And then there's the other side of that, which is the victim, the good neighbor who is not deserving of all this mistreatment, finally reaches a point where the police aren't helping, the authorities aren't helping, landlord, HOA, nobody's helping, and they take matters into their own hands, and they wind up doing stuff that they should not do. And it's not in their character to do, but they do it. They become so desperate. They might commit the crime. They might commit the violent act. And I call it NFH syndrome, and I think that that's probably the scariest thing that I see. It gets worse every year, and it shows no sign of improving.
What did you call it again?
NFH syndrome. NFH stands for Neighbors from Hell.
Okay, syndrome. So the victim, the one where you're seeing the violent outcomes, is where the victim feels so desperate because they've reached out in so many ways for help that they're not getting it, and they go the opposite end of the spectrum, which is to do something violent or something dramatic to deal with the situation, is what you're saying.
Yes. In fact, 2020 did a piece back in early August right along those lines where a guy was being harassed by his neighbors, and they were threatening to hire someone to rape his, 15-year-old daughter. And that was enough to send him over the edge. It would send a lot of people over the edge, myself included, I'm sure. And he shot two of them, and they died. He killed two neighbors. And he's been in court because of that.
I mean, the extremes that people will go into, and something probably they started off as something as simple as, the trash or the noise, something as simple as that, and it always makes me wonder why people can't have those productive, conversations, or those reasonable people, and people are very diverse. Now, when you talk about, give us an example, and we have a couple of people in the studio, so we are in the screening process right now with them. When someone calls you, what is it that, walk through a typical example of when someone reaches out to you through your website for intervention or calls you, what is it that you're doing as an equalizer or a troubleshooter? What exactly, can you walk through an example?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's one of two things. Some people are contacting me because they want their story told on TV, they want me to come and intervene, or they want maybe a correspondent with ABC News to come and interview everybody and expose this bad neighbor. So in a case like that, I basically take down as many facts as I can, and I'll present a story to my senior producer as a proposal, something that he and the other executives might consider. But I think more importantly, people who are reaching out to me who need actual assistance, they're not looking for TV exposure. First off, I have to get to know them. I have to know who I'm dealing with, because I would say 10% of the folks who reach out to me feel that they're the victim, but they were actually the initial troublemaker. And, I see that quite a bit, and that's something that, it's a shame. Pete, to hear my support, and I'll certainly give them my support, I'll give them my guidance, but it's not because they're right. It's because they've made mistakes, and I'll then help them to correct those mistakes. The rest of the people, I'd say 80 to 90%, are the folks who have really just been through it all, no matter what. It could be, pool water runoff, you name it, parking disputes. In those cases, I want to find out first what they have done in order to get to this point. And, sometimes they've made mistakes, sometimes not. Mainly, what I usually find is that their local authorities, could be the HOA board, the landlord, the police, the court system, that they have failed the good neighbor. And that's because they consider neighbor disputes to be petty squabbles. Let these people work it out. It doesn't belong on my desk. And in a case like that, they sometimes need to get a call from me just saying, hey, I'm looking at this. I was thinking of covering it in my newsletter. And maybe elsewhere, and then, sometimes that triggers a little bit of action on their part that, they had failed to enact in the past.
Thank goodness they have that resource in you to be able to support them in any way that you can, as you said, in your role as troubleshooter and or equalizers or seeking justice. We do have a couple of callers, and so Abby, why don't you introduce Stacy?
Yes, we have Stacy on the line, and she is currently feeling victimized by her neighbors. She's already gone to court, but she is looking to ask Bob a question.
Hi, Stacy.
Okay, so let me open Stacy's line. So, Stacy, you're on air with Bob Borzotta.
Hi, Stacy.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Hanging in there. I had my neighbor file a PPO against me. She stated that I tried to run her down with my vehicle while she had her baby in her arms, and that she had to jump out of the way.
Okay, yeah, I'm seeing cars used a lot, and in this case, you're being accused of having used a car to terrorize a neighbor, like to feign swerving toward that person, and she's saying she had to jump out of your way, and you're saying
she said I tried to run her down, and the problem is that her mother, that it's her mother and her daughter that live there. The mother is backing up everything that the daughter is saying, so they have a witness.
Yeah.
Even though
she is a tainted witness, though. I think anyone would agree over in the prosecutor's office. Just because someone related to the complainant, your neighbor, happens to say that this happened, it's not a very good witness. In fact, that made it to court. If you have a lawyer, your lawyer will basically, tear that person to shreds, because why would mom not support her daughter? Even if her daughter were lying. And so I don't think you're in too much trouble there. But I'm wondering, how did it get to the point where she is making this accusation? What did you do that made her make up this false accusation?
I've lived next door to them for about 15 years now. And I have for many years just bit my tongue and knew that if I wasn't friends with her, that I was going to have issues with her because of just the kind of person that she is. She's kind of like that bully personality. And I even blocked off the windows on that side of my house. I had them taken, filled in and everything. Took my windows down on that side of the house because she would stand in her house and she would yell over into mine.
What was she yelling over to your house?
Yeah, yelling things over into my house. Yelling, "Hey, Stacy, hey, what are you doing, Stacy?" Just being obnoxious. She's kind of obnoxious. Mm-hmm. And I kept trying I would ignore it. I'd be out doing gardening. She'd come around and she'd start yelling, look at Stacy in her shorts, blah, 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 blah. Yelling out loud. And I'm trying to do gardening, so I would just get up and go in the house. I kept not wanting the conflict, So I kept turning the other cheek, walking away. This has gone on for years. Well, finally, I came outside. I have dogs. I have show dogs, and they're my children. I don't have children or anything. And she had found a dead rat in her yard, was sure that I put it there, and threw rat poison, and it was all in my yard, rat poison, and my dogs were out there.
Okay.
And that's what really that pushed me over the edge when that happened.
Did you contact the police about it?
Oh, yeah, that was a trip. She and I got in an argument about it. I had called the police. She and I was standing out front waiting for the police, and she came out, and she and I got in an argument about it. And she was right in my face, and she had her finger pointing right in my face, and she finally just took her finger and just jabbed me right in the face. And I was standing on the sidewalk, mind you. I was not on her property at all. Mm-hmm. And it was just like automatic. When she did that, I slapped her across the face. I did. Yeah.
Well, she assaulted you and you defended yourself.
Pardon?
She assaulted you and you defended yourself.
Right. Well, then, oh, my God, she's like a hood. She was from the hood. You know what I'm saying? she grabbed me, and I mean, I don't fight. I don't do that stuff. And anyway, she ended up swinging me around and bashing my head into her car. There was a dent in her car door. I ended up having to go to the hospital, be checked out and everything. The police came. They didn't do anything. Even though
you had to go to the emergency room because of your injuries?
Yes, I did. And there was another person there when it happened and was my witness.
Okay.
And the police still didn't do anything. And I kept calling the police and asking, I want to talk to the detective on this. I want to talk to the detective. I never got any response. Now, we're talking Detroit. Maybe that's what the problem is. But I never got anything, nothing. They didn't get back with me about anything.
How long ago was that?
So that was a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. I did go down and file a PPO, but I was honestly so shook up. I had to have like an MRI and stuff on my head and everything because of the head trauma. And now, I'm in a payment plan trying to pay off all those hospital bills because I don't have insurance. Well, anyway, the police didn't do a single thing. And then
to this day, have you called them recently? Have they explained why they didn't do anything?
Yeah, the second incident is the one where her daughter says I tried to run her down with my car.
Yeah, and that's
and
separate
her daughter was.
Go ahead.
Her daughter was pissed.
Yes, no, I was going to say, Stacey, this is Pattie, the host. We're going to go to the next caller. So, Stacey, did you have a very specific question for Bob to answer?
Yes, I do. I'm sorry. I want to know how I can protect myself. We have a mutual restraining order that is very encompassing for anyone who comes in my yard. She can't keep, calling out to them and talking to them and just. I'm supposed to totally not talk to them, which I don't anyway. That's not a problem.
Good. And Stacey, you want to keep abiding by the mutual restraining order. You don't want to be the bad guy who breaks it. She will probably at some point be the bad guy because she has been the bad guy. You're obviously not a physical fighter. She obviously is. And the police certainly should have made an arrest at that time. When someone's being taken to the hospital for an MRI, and that you were clearly injured, so there should
have been pictures of my neck and everything. I had.
What? Hey, Stacey, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Sorry.
Let me say this. No, it's fine. It's fine. That's the issue with any TV or radio format. There's never enough time. Why don't you write to me? Use the address, and I'll ask Pattie to repeat this for folks later on. It's NFH, which stands for Neighbors from Hell, at Borzotta.com. My last name is Borzotta, BORZOTTA.com. And that way you can write directly to me, and we can talk about this. Now that we've been introduced by way of Pattie's show, you and I can talk offline about it. Because a lot of these issues are going to be those types of things that cannot get resolved. I can't really give too much guidance during a couple of minutes.
Yes, and thank you, Stacey. We've already put her on mute, but thank you, Stacey, for calling in, and do encourage you to reach out to Bob, and I believe we already also got your email address so that you can continue the conversation. We do have another caller, Bob, but before we take Carol, this goes back to what you were saying before, the NFH syndrome, these violent outcomes where things are getting to this point where there's, people are getting seriously injured, going to the emergency room, and it's really sad that it's getting to this point. And here's a real example here with this Stacey calling in about that. We do have Carol. You are familiar with a little bit of Carol's scenario, so you want to give a quick summary, Bob, of Carol's scenario, and then we'll ask her what her question is.
Yeah, very quickly, just to summarize for folks, because Carol had written in earlier, so I was able to take a look. She's not unlike a lot of victims out there. She is a woman who's living by herself in a rental unit, and she is not getting help from the landlord, despite the fact that she has two different male neighbors who live, within that same managed property, who have been harassing her and victimizing her in a number of ways. And, not only has she had very little help from the police authorities, but the landlord refuses to set up a no trespass zone for the one neighbor, even though, he's already faced some trouble with the law in all of this. Do I have a pretty good summary there, Carol?
So I'm going to bring Carol in now. So, Carol, you're live on the program, and Bob was just asking if he gave a pretty good summary, and then also followed by what your specific question is.
Yes, hello, Pattie, and thank you for having me on your show. And also, Bob, thank you for listening in and helping me. You gave a pretty good description of what's been happening with me. I'm one of those examples of how a county attorney did not want to prosecute the harassment charge and sent us instead to mediation, which, is not a good solution for anything. Yeah. So there is a civil injunction against him. However, the police cannot do anything unless there's a no trespass order in place. And they have asked me to get this from the landlord, and they've also been in contact with my landlord requesting the same, and my landlord just will not do this.
Now, and that's a woman, right? Your landlord is
yes.
She's a female, and she manages your property and a neighboring property.
Correct. And in the past, my landlord has told me, and I do have this on audio recording, that she is afraid of him. However, she supports him greatly to the police and tells the police that, guys, she's just such a nice guy and, all this sort of stuff.
Well, why is she afraid of him? Afraid of him if he's such a nice guy.
There you have it.
It's got to be one or the other. I mean, obviously, I don't know what the police have found in speaking with the landlord. I'd like a chance to speak to the landlord.
I would love for you to speak to my landlord. I truly would. So, I'm in a position where I've been trying to gather up the courage to take this person back to court for a contempt of court charge for violating the injunction, but I'm very afraid of him. I will support
you through that. And, Carol, I will support you, through email, through telephone communication, going through that. I know it's a tough thing, it's a scary thing, but it's also a very important thing. I think that once you start standing up for yourself, you see that these bullies of the adult world aren't quite as strong. They're just little jerks that will, succumb to the law in many cases, and when they don't, because you have because you were successful in getting all of the judgments against this person taken care of, the police will come, and like they said, we need the no trespass order in effect. And then the next time the guy
thank you for understanding that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Carol, did you have a specific question for Bob right now? And I know that you will continue your conversation, but did you have a specific question right now?
Well, he has sort of answered that, and that,
Good.
I need to once again find the courage to stand up for myself. But my main question to him was, Bob, can you help me?
Yeah. I think between, and Carol, you and I will email and call each other. You have my email address, I hope, or if not, you'll be given it. I think between our communication and you having the courage to go and file these charges, we're going to get to that point where you need to be. And of course, it takes a long time to get to this point. So don't feel bad. You're in good company. No one gets the pleasure of getting in and out of these things really quickly, except for me, because I'm able to do it and just go around saying, "Hey, ABC News, I'm going to put you on ABC." But I know that we're going to be able to start to resolve this in the coming weeks, maybe months.
Oh, that would be
Carol,
wonderful.
What a wonderful thing that you did in taking the step just to even call in and vocalize it, because that is a courageous step in itself.
And
so folks who are in the chat room, and Carol and Stacy who are on the line, again, you can follow up with Bob at NFH Neighbors from Hell, NFH at Borzotta BORZOTTA.com, and as a way to continue that conversation. Carol, thank you so much for calling in. Bob, would you be willing to take one last caller? We do have another caller that wanted to speak.
Of course.
Okay, great.
Yeah, certainly.
So, Abby, if you would introduce Scott, I believe that you spoke to him.
Yes, I did. We have Scott on the line, and he just moved into a home, and the realtor did not let them know about the next-door neighbors, and he said that they are living next to a frat house, and did not know about that beforehand. So the noise level, I think, was one of his biggest concerns.
Okay, great. Thank you, Abby. And Scott, you're live on the air with Bob, and if you have a specific question, let him know.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
I've been better. Like I was telling the screener, it's been almost 24 hours without sleep. The noise is still going on. It is a fraternity next door. I could literally put the phone to the window and you could hear it. I'll give you an idea of what it sounds like out there.
Let's see that dirty cut! Let's see that dirty cut!
This is all night.
Let's see that dirty cut!
Oh my goodness,
and
that's nuts.
and it's that's happening live right now. That's not a tape recording. That's
no,
something that you are. That's happening right outside your home right now.
Absolutely. Let me put it back up to the window.
It's not rape if you can't say no. It's not
all
rape
night.
if
This
you
has
can't
been going
say
on.
No.
All night, and it's disgusting stuff they're saying, and we can't sleep. I mean, we physically cannot sleep.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you caught this on 2020, not to be shamelessly plugging the excellent ABC News program 2020 Fridays, but we did something like this, I think, back in January of 2015, where there was a guy who was just endlessly being harassed by the people who were essentially renters next door, and it was a frat house. And there was even a movie with, I think, Seth Rogen made called Neighbors, and next door is a frat house. I'm not sure why anyone would move into a place, not to pick on you, Scott, but did you ever, this is going on 24 hours a day now. When you looked at the house, was it not going on?
It was not going on. We asked the realtor about the neighbors. We were told it was an elderly couple that lived next door. Our understanding is that this fraternity house is something that has gone up quite recently. So we did our due diligence, I promise you, and it's going on. I mean, it's out. It's just I can't even think straight because it's outrageous. And every time I open my window, this is what I'm getting.
Fuck niggers,
it doesn't end. It just doesn't end.
And what was he saying right there?
It just keeps going on.
And I'm sorry, Scott, what was that voice saying right now?
I don't know what they're saying, but some of the stuff's been quite crude and questionable.
And it's aimed right at you, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm. When I open the window, the bedroom is somewhat soundproof, thank God, but my daughter's bedroom isn't. The living room isn't. The patio isn't.
Do you ever yell down at them?
I tried going over, and it didn't end too well. And I got to worry about repercussions like pranks and stuff because I know someone that was in a similar situation, and it didn't end well either. So I have to be careful with my family as well.
Yeah, and no offense against any college-age folks who are tuned in, listening, who are good, regular citizens, but come on, a lot of your peers, you got to agree with me, who are 18 to 22, are morons, and they make bad decisions, and they think it's fun and funny to harass and terrorize neighbors. I see it quite a bit. Scott,
Bob, I have a question for you. Are those fraternities not regulated by the universities that sponsor them? Would that not be an avenue in which Scott could go to?
Yes, in many cases it is. And what we did with that other story that I referred to was you can involve the university itself in this. Now, chances are you're not on university property. They are not on university property. And the university is going to say, well, what are we going to do? Well, the university can actually slap them into shape and revoke their charter. And this is the other thing that gets a little complicated about fraternities. They don't just answer to the university. They have their, central governing force, whether it's Sigma Delta, whatever it is. And they are the ones that you probably want to speak to. about having this problem solved. If this is a real threat, go ahead.
It's just like even, like, it's just every time I open my window, it's open. Like, this is it opened right now live. Woo, woo, woo.
Hey, Scott, whereabouts do you live? East Coast, West Coast?
West Coast. West
Coast, where right now it's about 5 o'clock in the evening?
Mm-hmm.
So it's happy hour for them, and what time do they start to quiet down?
Since I would say it went on till about 4 last night.
4 in the morning?
Oh, yeah.
And you've called the police?
Hours and hours, literally, I open the window, which I'm going to do again, and it's this.
Fuck niggers, fuck niggers, yeah! Rainbow!
Let me just say, Pattie, on internet radio, it's okay to use bad language, right?
Oh, yeah, we're fine.
Okay. It sounds like that person is saying fuck, N-word, niggers.
Yes, that's what it
it
sounded like.
That's what it sounds like, which, I mean, if this is seriously happening right next door to you, and I'm not trying to doubt you, it's just that it's extremely loud, and do you have other neighbors who are there listening to this?
There's no one on the other side of them is the thing. That house is not occupied currently. And the one to the other side of us is a young couple, and I spoke to them, and they seem to think they're not bothered by it. We are, very much so. And I thought I heard the same thing, and I got to tell you, it seems like the lowest form of life is living over there.
Yeah. There's just so many ways to attack this. Number one, if you haven't already, start getting video recordings with audio of what is happening right outside the window. Start calling the police every time there is this kind of stuff going on. And, given the language that they're using, if they are using the N-word, there are certain black groups there on the West Coast that would be interested in hearing that these college kids who subscribe to a fraternity who belong to a certain university are using this kind of foul language. So I'd be interested in helping you attack this going forward. So I hope you also write into me, and we'll work on exposing these folks. Can you tell me which university is it that they belong to?
Hang on, I went downstairs because I had been muted. So hang on, it's just very, very hard to hear. Give me a second.
It's not rape if she can't say no. It's not rape if
I got to get back upstairs.
So meanwhile, Scott, I'm going to put you on mute because we're starting to run out of time with the program. I do encourage you to contact Bob and to follow up with that. And Bob, thank you so much for being willing to help these folks and following up with them. And we did receive folks' emails. Again, folks, please do reach out to Bob. This is what he does. He's one of those troubleshooters. He's an equalizer. He's there to help you maneuver this, and it's not going to take, it might take a little bit of time, and Bob will walk you through that. Again, NFH@Borzotta.com. So, Bob, we usually in our closing really encourage people to take the next step. And for obviously some of these folks here will definitely be taking the next step with you. Do you have some thoughts for people in terms of how they move forward, a call to action or assignment for the week? Our listeners are used to assignments. So do you have some strategies or something of that nature you want to share at this point?
Yeah, let me say, it depends really on what kind of a situation you're in. If you're tuned in because you're a regular listener, you don't happen to have a neighbor conflict right now, consider yourself God blessed and make the most of it. Love thy neighbor. You don't have to, go around begging them to do something with you. You don't have to want them to be your best friend. Just start really valuing the peace that exists between you and those other neighbors. It's becoming increasingly rare. Go out of your way to do whatever for those folks. And if their kids come knocking and they're selling Girl Scout cookies or something for, the high school play or sports team, see if you can, support them. It's all part of being a good neighbor. If, on the other hand, you are in the midst, like the folks who called in and like all the folks I'm always dealing with, if you're in the midst of an all-out war with your neighbor, my assignment would be this. If you're dealing with someone who's harassing you, and 9 times out of 10, they are harassing you, I'd like for you for the next week to not show them your pain. I would like for you to just suck up the anxiety so that they don't see it. See, they are psychological sadists. And the more you wriggle, the more you suffer, the happier they are. I want to rob them of that happiness. And it starts with just starting out with 1 week. Don't show the pain.
Yeah, don't give them the power. All right, so, very, very good. Now, there are a number of ways that folks can reach you. What is the best way for folks to reach out to you, besides the email, other things that you want them to be aware of?
I hate to shamelessly plug my hideous book.
No,
Neighbors
plug
from
away,
Hell.
really. Plug away.
I can say Neighbors from Hell is still, for me, the quintessential place to get acquainted with what you're going through, because what you're going through is so often a big question mark in your mind, and you really need to get a full sense of what this is all about, why it's happening, the forensic background of neighbor disputes and what these people think, what they're like, and what you as a victim might tend to be doing wrong and what you could start doing right. So I think that's a good place to start. It's an inexpensive book. If you're on Kindle, Prime, Amazon Prime, I think it's free to rent. It's in libraries. So read that. But then also go to neighborsfromhell.com, join our message board, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and if you do want to go on ABC, by all means, send me some good video and we'll talk.
Okay, very, very good. So a number of ways to not only connect with him, to follow him, the book, also the Neighbor Beat, which you could probably sign up for, the e-newsletter at Neighbors from Hell. And again, his email, for those of you who are going to follow up with him, NF, like Neighbors from Hell, NFH at Borzotta, BORZOTTA.com. Bob, first of all, before I say that to you, Bob, I just want to thank so much for the listeners that called in today, those who are followers or fans of yours, our listeners over the years, those who joined us in the chat room and the Twitter feed. Thank you very much for calling in and being part of this conversation tonight. Thank you, Bob, for shedding light for us on what you've experienced personally and how this has, really crafted your own journey and how it's become this calling in your life, this passion, and for the folks like Carol who really take a courageous step just to reach out to you to say, can you be there to help, and knowing that they're not alone. So thank you for all that you do and contribute to the community by helping these neighbors out. Bob, what final message would you like to leave tonight with listeners?
Thank you, Pattie. You think of how humanity has evolved and how in some cases we have devolved. And when it comes to neighbor disputes, this is not a new problem. It is as old as the ages. People have had trouble getting along. But it has been a problem on steroids over the last few years. We have all kinds of things that are making people into jerks. I still say that 80% of the folks out there are good, regular, everyday people. But that does still leave you with a 1 in 5 shot of getting there are many ways of dealing with it. There are many positive ways that are lawful, that are socially responsible. Be the good guy, stay the good guy, and always be the one who is on top, not on the bottom. When you're on the bottom, things just really suck.
All right. Thank you, Bob, and good night, everyone.
Thanks, Pattie.
Thank you for listening to the Texas Conflict Coach. We hope you enjoyed the program. You can find all of our podcasts archived to listen at your convenience at texasconflictcoach.com or download the podcast at iTunes or Stitcher Radio. You can also become a Facebook fan of Conflict Connection or Twitter me at TX Conflict Coach.